Welcome back, college baseball fans, specifically ACC fans. I know we just saw you if you were paying attention to the other regional, the Charlottesville regional, but now we are headed out west to the Wild West, Oklahoma. Jake's wearing his Sooners shirt. Micah's doing the finger guns. We are ready to roll. It is Oklahoma, Duke, UConn, and everybody's favorite,
Oral Roberts.
Oral
Everybody
Roberts.
loves Oral.
That's a tough place to get into.
Yes. We are joined by Micah, who's working on a graphic right now, so he'll be limited in some of his discussion, but he is here as he wants to be. We're talking first, Oral Roberts. Jake, why don't you talk to us about Oral Roberts and the difference between this team and last year's World Series team?
It's a few of the same pitchers, but I would say from a roster makeup standpoint, it's not really a lot of the guys that we saw last year, which was kind of, I think, what was so special about that run was it was a lot of COVID seniors on their last run here. They played in the Summit League, who had only 5 teams who were eligible to make the postseason. They kind of got hot at the end. I know Mike and I really went back and forth about our Summit League predictions. Holton Breeze was on the team last year. I think he's another one. And I think the big thing to track with Oral Roberts is they actually split with Oklahoma. This will be their 3rd time facing Oklahoma. They did a home and home, which I think is pretty cool that a school like Oklahoma traveled or east to Tulsa to do that. But again, they run ruled them once, and the second time OU kind of threw a couple guys and started a few guys that don't normally play. So they're still going to be a heavy underdog. But again, they have a little bit of that postseason experience. They are kind of trending in the right direction. But again, it's at the end of the day a 4 seed.
Yeah, and that brings us to the 3 seed now, the University of Connecticut. Micah, big fan of the UConn Huskies. They are your UConn Huskies. Talk to us about this UConn baseball team if you would like.
They're probably the next, like besides Duke, right? They're the best pitching staff in this regional. I really like how they're set up as a whole. I think the biggest concern for me, Monty, is how they look down the stretch. They did not look great in the Big East tournament. They kind of struggled a little bit. Obviously, I watched them play Creighton in person, and that was a team that hit the piss out of the ball and could get guys out at a pretty good rate. They're pretty sound defensively too, which, obviously you need in postseason play. But, they're definitely a dangerous 3 seed, right? I mean, when I'm sure Duke wasn't thrilled to see the Big East regular season champion as their 3 seed out in Norman. But, I was saying this pre-show, I think UConn is just as capable as winning this as Duke and Oklahoma are. I don't think they're being counted out a little bit too much, which is a good and a bad thing, I guess, when it comes down to regional play. But again, they also, I think their biggest thing, and what I'm intrigued about, Monty, because we've kind of seen Duke a little bit, struggle a little bit with how much they strike out. UConn's pitchers are strikeout guys. So it'll be interesting first matchup tomorrow.
Yeah, that being said, I think the pitching staff is really, really good. I think that's obviously UConn's strength, but if they're going to have a tall task holding that Duke offense, who we've seen kind of be contained at points during the ACC tournament, but then they'd ultimately explode. So even if they're able to get shut down by the starter, I mean, you saw it against Miami last week. They had 1 hit through 5 innings. They didn't have a hit until the 5th inning against NC State, and both those games they ended up scoring 8 runs. So there's a lot to be said. So it's going to be up to the UConn bullpen to really shut this team down. But I do like the UConn pitching staff. I am surprised I'm not hearing more about them. It's mostly been talked about Duke, a little bit about Oklahoma, and then the other 2 teams are getting kind of overlooked, and one of them shouldn't be in UConn. So moving along to Duke, obviously I think that Duke is the best team in this regional, despite being the 2 seed. They've got the arms, they've got the offense. I mean, they just won an ACC tournament without 2 of their starting pitchers, both guys who are expected to pitch this weekend. And they've got power up and down the lineup. But let's talk about this Oklahoma team, since this is an ACC show and we generally talk about Duke all the time. We know what Duke's about. Jake, talk to me about the Oklahoma Sooners and the team. Are they the same team that Pitt run ruled?
I mean, yes and no. Obviously, their Big 12 record is what's going to quickly jump out to people. I should say to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, as they lost series to Texas, Oklahoma State, as well as West Virginia, who were all the three teams that finished above 600. They swept everybody else. Like, they swept UCF, they swept Kansas State. Everybody that was under 600, they went 20-1 against, with the one loss being Cincinnati on the back end of a doubleheader. They've played a ton of double headers, which, as the season's kind of progressed, they've gotten really, really good at it. I get to see them a few weeks ago when they played Baylor. The starting pitching really kind of does concern me a little bit, just because it's a lot of inconsistency. They tend to kind of leave the ball a little bit over the plate. But the flip side of that is this might be the most athletic team in the country. I mean, John Spikerman in center field, he was injured a good chunk of the year. He finished just a hair under 400. He was over 400 heading into the Big 12 tournament. I think he's likely an All-American if he plays the entire season. He's not even the fastest player on his team. Kendall Pettis is another guy that just flat out flies. Bryce Madron, I saw him hit an inside the park home run on just not necessarily a routine double, but Baylor kind of slept just like an inch, and Madron kind of took it there.
And even Michael Snyder, their first baseman, has 15 stolen bases, right?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say next. He's a guy that has a ton of pop too as well. He really him and Anthony McKenzie, I think, are two of probably their only big bopper bats. Nicklaus behind the plate is, again, kind of not really a fast guy just because he's a catcher. But Anthony McKenzie, I mean, this is a guy in his fifth year, was at Sam for 2 years, was really kind of the only one that played good on the OU team last year. I mean, they had a ton of guys just immediately bounce back, which I think is a really, really hard thing to do. I mean, they had so many guys bounce back. Even the guys that left Oklahoma had bounce back seasons. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of – I just alluded to Wallace Clark there for you.
I thought you weren't going to say the name. I was proud of you for a second.
I think that's going to be the one thing is, the losses for Oklahoma, I mean – they are really bad. Like the Pitt run rule, they got swept by Lamar and really didn't look that competitive in it. They're one of the best road teams, I think, in baseball. But the flip side of that is they've really been kind of mediocre at home.
Which is where the regional is.
They're a little bit lucky that they didn't get an SEC team go in there and try and take it over, because I know we saw it with Arkansas at Oklahoma State a few years ago. LSU, I know Mike and I projected to go there. They would have taken over that regional. They're a little bit lucky that they kind of get a good wine and cheese crowd in Duke, Tulsa, and Connecticut, because, I mean, their stadium really does kind of leave something to be desired. Granted, I saw
Tulsa. Is it Oral Roberts?
I did. They are located in Tulsa.
They're Tulsa's baseball team, though, because University of Tulsa doesn't have baseball.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, they're doing a little bit with the berms out in right field and left field, but I mean, this is not going to be a rocky, raunchous outfield environment or even home environment, which I think can kind of play into Duke's hand, because I think Duke's one of the best teams at A, going on the road, and then B, they play in a ballpark that kind of leaves something to be desired. So that's going to be the one thing that we can really track, is how Duke plays in a place that they have to create their own environment.
We don't stand for Jack Coombs slander.
That was not slander against the stadium itself. Duke just feels like a very wine and cheese kind of fan base, if you will.
This is an ACC show, and you're going to insult our listeners.
That's a compliment. I mean, Duke is a prestigious university. They're not going to paint up their bodies and do outrageous stuff. They have a job the next day.
By the way, the reason Tulsa was on your mind, guess who's from Tulsa?
Wallace Clark.
Yeah.
Back in his home state.
Back in his former team. He's a 2022 World Series appearing shortstop for the Oklahoma Sooners. How big a storyline do you think that's going to be?
He was the third baseman, Monty.
He was the third baseman. I apologize.
Yep, they had, as Noah likes to call him, the knife at shortstop. He really kind of came on late. It'll be interesting to see kind of if he takes his Duke people around to all his old spots. He's like, here's where I used to go get salads at Salad A Go-Go. That'll be really interesting to see. This is where I used to live. It was walking distance to the baseball field. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he left so early that he signed a lease in Norman. So maybe that'll just be where Duke stays, is at Wallace Clark's empty apartment in Norman.
What a wild number of random facts. I don't know what to do with this information. Thank you, Jake, for your insight on
This is the
Oklahoma.
greatest episode I've ever been on. This is amazing.
So Duke is going to be facing UConn in the first round. We don't know who's pitching for Duke yet. I have not seen it. Jonathan Santucci supposedly is going to be available this weekend. I don't know how long. He's only been out 2 weeks, so I don't know how much he'll need to be stretched out. But I know that Coach Pollard is typically pretty cautious. We saw it with Andrew Healy. And then Kyle Johnson should be free to go as long as he needs to go because he had that rest. And then, of course, you've got Ryan Higgins. So Duke has options starting, but we all know who's going to be finishing games for Duke this weekend, right?
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. It's going to be Rubber Arm Chucky B.
Um,
I already tweeted out a meme earlier. I'm sure he's already getting antsy because they haven't played in 4 days.
I should say, Monty.
He probably threw the BP today, Monty.
Yeah,
just to make sure
probably.
Duke has it listed on their preview as Andrew Healy.
Thank you very much. Andrew Healy will pitch. He had an outstanding start against NC State last week. So Andrew Healy is a really, really nice guy to go with. The question is, how long do they let him go? He was able to throw 5 innings against NC State, but only 59 pitches. So the 2 weeks before, he only went 2 innings, coming back from an injury. So this will be his 4th start back from an injury where he was out for a little bit over a month. So it'll be interesting to see how far he goes. But like we've said, Duke's bullpen very, very deep, and I think that's what's going to give them the edge in this regional. Micah, we'll start with you. Let's do your picks 4 through 1.
You want me to go backwards or forwards?
Backwards, baby.
Oral Roberts 0-2. This is not the Omaha team. The Summit League is the worst worst conference in college baseball, and it isn't even close. I mean, somehow they made the SWAC look good. What?
I was just saying the SWAC gives it a reference money.
You're right, but at least the best team in the Summit League. Well, I guess if you take I'm taking St. Thomas out of the conversation. I guess that's not fair to do that to the Summit League because St. Thomas was actually if St. Thomas was in a tournament, not that bad. But anyways, I have Oklahoma as the 3. I have them their only win being Oral Roberts. I've got my beloved UConn Huskies making the regional final, and Monty, your Duke Blue Devils going to a super in the pairing that obviously you said cannot happen because you picked Alabama, but I do see a Florida State Duke super regional, aka an ACC final rematch.
Yeah, that'll be the fifth, at least the 5th and 6th times they play each other, possibly a 7th if it happens. Jake, hit me with your picks, buddy.
I mean, like Mike alluded to, Oral Roberts is just set up to be kind of the 0-2 team here. I'm gonna go UConn 1-1, or 1-2 and eliminated. I think OU just does so many things tremendous. I mean, Easton Carmichael's another guy that we really didn't talk about, but everybody and their mom has been on Duke to advance, which really kind of I know I picked it on my tweet to say Duke advances, but I think I'm gonna go with Oklahoma. They do their best when everybody's doubting them, and it's their own regional. So I'm going to go Oklahoma 1, Duke 2. I really, really like kind of what Oklahoma does because speed never slumps, and everybody has been on Duke.
I've muted Jake because I don't want to hear that. He was brought on this show after he asked to be on this show, and now he's going against the one program he can't go against.
I should say I would be happier if Duke wins. As an unbiased media member, I will be rooting for Duke.
I'm going to stick with you guys with Oral Roberts 0-2. I think UConn goes 1-2 and is the 3rd. Oklahoma is going to go into the final, but Duke is the best team in this regional. I think even Jake, you agreed with that at the beginning. You just didn't necessarily think they're going to win because of the reasons you just gave. And I think they're going to do what they're supposed to do. They're going to take care of business. They're going to go back to a super regional for the 2nd straight year. All right, that brings us to the end of this. Jake's night is done. He was gracious enough to give us his time. We're going to go to the bullpen. Nick's going to join us at about 8:00 for our next one, which I think we're going to go with Raleigh. How's that sound, Micah? You want to go with Raleigh next? You want me to invite you to that one too?
Yeah, I would love to remind everybody about how easy the Raleigh Regional is for NC State. I'd be happy.
Sounds fantastic. Additionally, if you're not listening to any of the other shows, Micah is going to do a show tomorrow morning. Did you start a StreamYard?
Yeah, but it's going to be tonight. It's not tomorrow morning.
Oh, never mind.
I got to drive to Clemson tomorrow morning. I'm doing a little 2 regionals in one day kind of action tomorrow.
I stand corrected. But yeah, there'll be another show at some point tonight with Micah from the FQ ACC streaming account.
We'll be doing the spaces at 8 CST, so 9 Eastern. So
yeah, if you're a non-ACC fan, you can go listen to them. You've got options. There's lots going on.
We'll be talking about ACC teams positively because I love Florida State.
Yeah.